maybe the most overlooked thing when it comes to making good coffee is water. We're live everywhere.
All over the place.
All over the place live.
This isn't live.
Live to the memory card.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's start. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Equal Parts Coffee Podcast. If you are watching this, you may notice, and if you are keen-eared, you may notice we got some different equipment. So it's going to look a little bit different now.
Yeah.
We're also in a different spot. Again, it's close to the last spot, but it's slightly different.
We like to move around.
Yeah, we're just trying to figure out where we want to do this.
Exactly.
So, episode 3.
Episode 3.
Episode 3, third time's the charm. This will be the best one that we'll ever record, probably.
That is abysmal.
I really hope not. I really hope not.
I strive to improve, so.
But that's impossible because we got a special treat coming up next episode.
Oh, yeah.
So look forward to that.
Yeah.
Yes, we're excited about that. So, Christmas, New Year's. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
2025. We're here. We did it.
We made it.
Yeah. What'd you do for Christmas, Jack?
Spent some time with family.
Classic.
Just a lot of family. Lots of nieces and nephews. A lot of little kids running around. It was a great time.
Yeah, that's fun. Same here. We spent it with my wife's family in Denver. Some good coffee shops in Denver. One of them we have right now. So we'll tell you that. It's hidden behind this. You may get a little peek on the bag. Who knows? Maybe you recognize it. We'll see. I'll tell you in just a minute. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was nice. There wasn't any snow in Denver. There was like some melted snow in people's yards.
Oh, good.
Which is super fun.
We had some snow here. It was great. It melted right after Christmas, but it was good.
Yeah. And also on the day this is releasing, it's somebody's birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. We cannot mention you by name because legally we're not allowed to mention somebody 2 podcasts in a row.
No.
So sorry about that, but you know who you are. Jack, if you feel like it, you can put a little like happy birthday sparkles or something like in this space right here. Our producer, Jack, not you.
No.
You know, the editor,
Different
Jack. It's a different Jack. But also, if that's too much work, don't worry about it. So.
It's not like we're paying you anyway.
Yeah. No, you're working for free. So, all right. Yes, the coffee we have today is from Corvus Coffee. Jack, and I have been drinking this all week. It's super good.
We couldn't wait for you guys.
It is actually really good. It is a washed anaerobic. Pause. I'm drinking this out of my Corvus mug because it makes a lot of sense. Making today my masterpiece. I don't know if you can see that. This is actually not neutral mug. Classic. Love these mugs. They're very simple, and the Corvus collab, it's sweet.
Yeah, I always love mugs with all the little details on there. It's great.
Yeah. Yes, this coffee. It's a washed anaerobic coffee. Something that I always love about washed anaerobic coffees is they're very. They tend to be very floral, and they remind me a lot of gin. Honestly, like they have that kind of dry florality to them. That reminds me a lot of that. Like the same way that a natural anaerobic kind of reminds me of like a boozier like wine or beer. I feel like washed anaerobics tend to have that like light, clean.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So this one's really good. Do you want to move that?
Oh, yeah.
I just kind of slid that over there. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Don't knock it off. That'd be tragic.
If you hear a crash, it wasn't me.
Fire. All right.
You got to get those slurps in there.
Yeah, that's super good. Corvus's bags are super cool. They're the only shop I've ever seen that has these kind of like, they've got like a thing wrapped around here. So they got a little elastic. They got a couple pages of information, and on the inside too, they have more information, which is super
and
cool.
like I said, with these mugs here, like I love little details.
Yeah.
And like all little details on there. I'm also a sucker for like too much information. You know, you got all this crap in there.
Yeah. Good crap.
Just
crap
good
way.
crap. Yeah. Pardon my tongue. just love all the little details on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great bag. Hats off to the team at Corvus.
Yeah, Corvus is easily one of my favorite shops, if not my number one spot in Denver. I really like it. Their Lakewood location specifically, I really love. The first couple times I went out there, found that shop, and I always want to stop by. It's like their build out of their cafe is just like gorgeous. They have usually 5 or 6, I believe, different single origin coffees at different price ranges that you can actually get on pour over or espresso, which is super cool. There's not a lot of shops that do that. It's a lot of work, so it's pretty fun to be able to.
I need to go there at some point.
Oh yeah, I love it.
I've only been to Colorado a handful of times, but
yeah,
you have to take me there sometime.
Yeah, maybe special trip. Yeah, super fun. So Jack, you said that you had a little hot take.
Oh yes,
you wanted to share.
Yeah, speaking of coffee shops, all right. So everyone knows an Americano, right? Espresso,
yes.
Hot water. I'm not a big fan. I know people love it and people get it all the time, but to me, and this is gonna sound pretentious, but to me, it's almost like all the hard work that gets put into espresso is just kind of wasted when you add hot water to it.
Sure.
And while I know that Americanos can taste great and that's all fine and good, but why spend so much time perfecting your espresso only to dilute it when you could make an as good, if not better, like filter coffee much, much better?
Okay, so if it were up to you, would you like not serve Americanos? Like if you could make Americanos not
exist, because
not be served anymore at shops. Do you think that would be better?
See, on one hand, I get that in my head where I'm like, everything needs to be perfect, and everybody, if you don't get the perfect beverage, then you shouldn't get it at all. But that's just the perfectionist part of me. Sure. And I know that people love getting what they like, and that's okay by me. I just don't enjoy Americanos.
Okay.
Only not just because they don't taste as good as filter coffee, I think, but just because of all the work that's almost wasted in a way.
Sure. So I disagree with that, actually. I used to not really care for Americanos, and I didn't have them very often. So it'd be like, why would you do that? Because I like espresso on its own. Yeah. But really, when I got an espresso machine at home, I would get home from work and I would like dial in a coffee for fun. And oftentimes I would just be dialing in, and then I'd finally have like this really good shot of espresso. Pardon me. And have this really good shot of espresso, and it's like, okay, I'm so sick of drinking straight espresso now. Yeah. Now that I have this delicious shot, what do I do with it? And I'd make it into an Americano. What I like about an Americano is, well, one, if you don't know, Americano is just American and Italian. And it's because during World War II, there were a lot of American troops in the area, and they weren't used to espresso. They wanted an American style coffee, like a filter coffee like we have.
It was too strong for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what they were looking for. So they made them an American coffee. They'd take their shot of espresso and they'd put it into water. The context that I think that Americanos work really well in is palatability of espresso. So if I ever make myself an Americano, if it's a hot Americano, it's never like a 12-ounce drink.
Okay.
6-8 ounces, maybe. I'll take the espresso and putting it into water, not too hot of water. I feel like a lot of times the water's too hot. Can't drink it very well.
Is it because it kind of burns the espresso, or is it just too hot to drink right away?
Well, you've got that shot of espresso. I feel like just getting that like perfect tasting temperature water. Yeah. Like 140, 160. Yeah. Degree water. Yep. It's just gonna make it easiest to drink like right away. Yeah. I just don't like it too hot because you can't really taste anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But doing that like will stretch out the flavors of it, and I feel like you can actually taste things in it that you haven't really noticed before. And so I like it in that context.
Yeah. I will say that like my brain is very logic based. So when something doesn't make sense to me, I automatically classify it as something that's not good or that is wrong.
Sure.
But that's one thing that I'm learning is that obviously I'm not right about everything and about a lot of things.
Yeah. That's real.
So I'm always open to hear new things, and I never want to like just classify something in my mind as not good when I haven't really experimented with it very much. So
yeah, that's where I, honestly, when I do that, I feel like that's almost always the case. Is this is something I don't know that much about, but not always. But I also really like iced Americanos. For some reason, I don't know what it is. They seem more refreshing to me, like hot summer, and a lot of the times, as much as I like a flash pour over, a lot of times I almost prefer an iced Americano sometimes because I don't know what it is. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
If you are, you can feel free to fact check me. But this is the way it works in my mind: is in a flash pour over, right? You're putting that water through the bed of coffee and you're like extracting it. In an iced Americano, you've got all this water and you're mixing the espresso in. So I feel like the water molecules are less incorporated and bonded to the coffee itself in an iced Americano. It tastes more separate. Like it's like refreshing glass of water and espresso at the same time.
That just sounds gross to me. I'm drinking it espresso and water.
I didn't sell that very well, but I don't know. It just feels it's more refreshing. Like, I don't know, but
something about cold brewed coffee, whether or not it's actually cold brewed or if it's flash brewed, so brewed hot over ice. Something about that has some sort of, and mainly I think the main thing that gets affected is the aroma. It has, because it's cold, it has less aroma to it. Yeah. So that affects the way you taste it. But something about cold brewed coffee and hot coffee brewed over ice just has something off about the aroma that's one of the main reasons I don't really like cold coffee all that much.
Sure.
Of course I love hot coffee, and I think just the warmth and the familiarity it brings, that's what I love about it so much.
There is a level of like astringency and bitterness that I feel like kind of shows up when coffee is cold. Mm-hmm. And it's like almost like a chalky or like I don't know what it is.
Sure.
In some way it's like it's there, especially like in like flash coffee. I don't know what it is, but I do like flash coffee. It's not like I don't think it's the best way to try a coffee. Yeah. I definitely think like a hot pour over.
I love it too. There's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
And I still enjoy them greatly. It's just 90% of the time it's a hot cup of black coffee and that's it.
Yeah. I'm not British. I don't want to drink like a hot beverage in the middle of a hot sunny day, you know.
Well, I do. So
Jack's British.
You heard it here first, folks.
You heard it here first. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
Just discovered that. So that's not what today's about.
No.
Our idea for this episode was going to be coffee equipment at home.
Yeah.
There is so much of it. There's so many different things that you can get, different things that you can make. So we're going to talk about the kinds of things that you absolutely need, what you don't need, and the kind of things that are just nice to have, but you don't necessarily need.
Yeah.
I do want to say really quick, if you guys have anything that you want to hear us talk about, any ideas or questions, feel free to leave comments on our videos, on Instagram, send us a message, any of that. We want to hear you guys' ideas. We want to know the kinds of things that you guys want to learn about. It helps us out a lot too, because we have to think of less things. So,
and we want to talk about what you guys want to hear. So, we want to tell you what you want to hear.
If nobody wants to hear what you have to say, you've got nobody listening to a podcast.
No.
So that's not what we want. So feel free to throw those our way, because we definitely want to hear those.
Yeah.
So to start out, I guess we can do a little back and forth.
Sure.
And if we have the same things, we can just talk about it. But I feel like one of the number one things that you absolutely need at home to make good, high quality coffee, and a lot of people don't necessarily have or use, is a scale. You have to have a scale.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Coffee is, the density varies so wildly between regions and varieties and all of that kind of stuff. The seed itself is going to be different densities, and so you have different mass of that, right? And so when you grind that, it's going to be a totally different volume of coffee. And so just using a coffee scoop alone you're never going to get that kind of consistency.
Exactly.
And size difference too, right? Like you've got coffee beans that are huge, and then you got little pea berries, and you can fit more, right? If you take a scoop of pea berries, which are a lot denser and smaller, you're going to get way more coffee than if you got like this big Guatemalan coffee.
Yeah.
So you absolutely need that for that alone, but also for water. It's super helpful for pouring consistently, for pulling your espresso shot consistently. Those differences of a gram or two are going to make a huge difference in the way that tastes, especially when you're dealing with espresso. So if you have an espresso machine at home and you're not using a scale to weigh your coffee out and to put underneath your shot, you should definitely do that. It doesn't have to be super expensive.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really cheap scales, like on Amazon or anywhere.
Yeah.
The scale that I use for a long time, the scale that Jack currently has, is like a $25 scale.
Yeah.
Use it for pour overs. It's probably a little big for an espresso machine.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit too big, but they do make smaller, more accurate scales, which I do have one, and they're probably closer to $50, but really not that bad.
No, not that bad.
And if you're watching on YouTube, we can drop some of the links in the description if you want to know some of our recommendations for that.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And the thing is, it seriously will elevate what you're doing. It's going to increase your consistency. It's going to actually help you to like pay attention to what's happening. So if you care about that at all, weigh your coffee. It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
What's something for you?
Yeah. I mean, as far as filter coffee, one thing that, I mean, maybe some people already are thinking about, but is a Gooseneck Kettle. Being able to control the flow of your water is a big deal. Yeah. And there's a wide range of Gooseneck kettles you can get out there. You can get a good Gooseneck electric kettle for probably around $50, and then you can get the higher end like Fellow Stag, which is very nice. I do recommend for around those are going for like 200 now.
I think it's like 150. Did they get more?
Depending on if you get the ones with the fancy wooden handle, I think those are more.
Sure,
but those do look nice.
Yeah, they do.
I do recommend the electrical ones only because you can customize to what degree you want your water heated up to.
Yeah.
Which recommended good starting range is probably between 195 and 205.
Yeah, and that's a matter of preference and kind of what brewer you're using, what grind size, all of that. But Gooseneck Kettle was definitely on my list.
Yeah.
As somebody who, before buying anything when I was younger, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and make a pour over home. And I use like a tea kettle, and it doesn't work. You cannot pour where you need to pour. Being able to pour accurately in your bed of coffee makes a huge impact on the way it's going to taste. I'm not going to get into extraction theory now. There's a lot to that, but
that's going into the
evenly drawing from every particle in your coffee bed is like ideal. So if you're pouring with like this big heavy stream and you're just kind of like sloshing it around and you're not really able to pour that precisely, you're going to get really uneven extraction and you're not going to get that good of a cup.
Yep.
So yes, that's definitely something.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're not that expensive.
No.
Or if you have an electric kettle that's not a Gooseneck kettle that you really like, just get a cheap Gooseneck kettle that's not electric and just transfer it. Like there's solutions.
Definitely.
There's definitely things. Okay, something else that it's not year, but it is maybe the most overlooked thing when it comes to making good coffee is your water.
Yeah.
You have to have good water. Coffee is mostly water. I don't know if you believe it or not, but it is mostly water.
Yeah.
And for one, if your water doesn't taste good, your coffee's not going to taste good. That's just the way it is. I don't know if anybody's made like coffee when they're like backpacking or camping and stuff, and you use like, lake water, filtered, of course.
Yeah.
I've done that, and it's just like this water tastes gross. This coffee tastes like dirt. It's not very good.
Yeah. Well, and I think most people, you can recognize the difference between different types of water, whether or not it's treated in a facility. So maybe it's got some chlorine taste in it, or, different bottled water has different tastes. So that does come through in your final cup. But not only that, but the minerals inside of the coffee affect the way the coffee extracts a lot.
Yes. So your water is super important. It's unlikely that what you have coming out of your tap is that good, right? You might have pretty decent water and it might not be that bad. But for most people, that's pretty unlikely, especially if you have city water. You're going to have, chlorine and fluoride and all of that stuff in the water.
Yeah.
And it's going to impact your cup of coffee.
Definitely.
So some solutions for that, probably the lowest effort solution, is buy some spring water at the store. It's generally pretty well balanced. It's not necessarily ideal for what you're looking for coffee, but it'll taste better than probably what you've got at home.
Yeah.
I would recommend doing that probably over using a filter. Having a water filter at home, right? It'll if you have really bad water, it'll improve it a little bit, but it's not necessarily going to do great.
Yeah, as I say, if you don't want to go buy water, use a carbon filter, but it's very limited in kind of what it takes out. And it's not going to, obviously you're going to have less chlorine flavor, but the coffee's not going to extract right that way.
Yeah. And then some other solutions are, it's actually very easy to make your own water. I say very easy. If you have a very delicate scale and can do math.
So you got to be a chemist.
Yeah. There are some people I know that make their own water from like scratch with a few basic things that you can get at the grocery store. And they get their own balance of stuff, right? You can do that. That's a lot of work though. Yeah. I said it's easy. It's easy, but it's a lot of work.
I mean, you got to get distilled water, you got to get the right minerals and balance it out.
Yeah. There are companies out there like Third Wave Water that sell you packets of minerals that you can add to a specific amount of water, right? You can get a packet that's made for a gallon of distilled water and you just mix it in and you can use that. Super easy.
Yeah, I did that one time. I went to Florida and got some distilled water at the store. I brought some of these little Third Wave water packets and opened it up, dumped it, sloshed it around, made great coffee.
Yeah. What I actually do at home is I have these droplets of water, different concentrations of different minerals. It's Lotus Coffee Products is what they're called. There's some other companies that do it as well. I love them. What you can do with those is there are specific recipes that different people recommend, and you can actually use those recipes to add specifically the number of drops of minerals to the amount of water that you're making. I use that. So then every cup of coffee I'm making, I say, okay, it lets you kind of have some freedom. So I say, okay, this coffee, I honestly think would do a little bit better if it maybe had a little bit more, like a little brighter acidity. So I'm going to do a recipe to a balance of minerals that's going to bring out the acidity a little bit more. Yeah. Or it's like, this cup of coffee is going to do really well with like really round, smooth sweetness. So I'm going to add a little bit more of this mineral to it. It sounds complicated. It's honestly very easy. They have an app. I don't know if they made it, but that you can use they'll do like the math for you and everything. It's super fun. I actually really like using those and I would recommend them as well. So do you have something else? The last one.
I mean, I would say filter coffee wise, a good brewer. There are a lot of brewers out there. A V60 is an amazing brewer for, depending on the type you get, they're really not that expensive. Probably $30.
25, 30.
25, 30. Or a Kalita Wave. Mm-hmm. Those are great. There are different kinds of brewers. One's a cone, one's a flat bottom brewer. But obviously, all those together with your kettle and your scale, you can make and good water. You can make some great coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, having a good brewer. That was on my list as well. What I would say for that is don't overcomplicate it. Just get one. Just kind of look around, think of what you want. I definitely recommend like a flat bottom brewer for people starting out.
Sure. I
feel like they make a really nice round cup of coffee.
What do you think the difference as far as flavor wise would be in a V60 or flat bottom brewer?
So, to my understanding, because I'm just kind of learning about this as well, because I haven't done a lot with cone brewers. I have some and I'm learning it, but cone brewers tend to have a different extraction on the bed of coffee than a flat bottom brewer does. And so they tend to maybe bring out a little bit more acidity than a flat bottom brewer, where a flat bottom brewer is going to have a rounder, fuller taste. So it kind of depends on what you want.
Yeah.
I'll kind of switch between brewers depending on the coffee.
Yeah, definitely.
But stick to one, because going between brewers is wildly different. Trying to learn a new brewer and using like your same recipe is really difficult. So find one that works for you and stick to that.
One recommendation I do have, if you like strong coffee, obviously you can adjust your ratios to make a stronger cup of coffee. But if you want a good, strong cup of coffee, a very simple way to make it is an AeroPress.
Yeah.
One of the most like versatile brewing methods on the market. It's really easy to make. You don't even need a Gooseneck Kettle for an AeroPress.
No.
So you could just use your tea kettle, a few degrees off boil, and brew some coffee in there. That's what I use for backpacking or camping. Bring an AeroPress with me, super lightweight.
Yeah. I love the AeroPress. I use it at home all the time.
Yeah.
With that, don't grind super fine on an AeroPress. For some reason, all of these companies like that make grinders, like on their guides, they have AeroPress like just above like espresso and mocha pot. But I would not recommend that. Whenever I make an AeroPress, I make it the same grind size that I would for almost any pour over.
I mean, there are many different ways to make an AeroPress.
Yeah.
You can actually make espresso with an AeroPress with the help of an attachment.
Yeah. An espresso-like shot. It's gonna be a little thinner,
not true
quite
espresso,
but...
Yeah,
but yes, I do love the AeroPress. If you like that kind of full-bodied taste of coffee, that's a great brewer to start with.
Yeah.
Something I wouldn't recommend. I would recommend getting a brand that people know of brewers. There's a lot of like random brands of brewers.
Yeah, little off brands.
Don't mess around with those. Just get something that like a V60 or a Kalita. Get something that is well known that you can easily get filters for. And I also wouldn't recommend using like a wire filter.
Yeah, we should talk about that. Like what the difference between a metal reusable filter versus paper filter.
Yeah. I know a lot of people don't like to waste, and I totally get that. I prefer not to waste things when I don't have to either. Yeah. But a cup of coffee through a metal filter is just not really worth drinking for me. Like
True.
The clarity, like, sorry, let me restart.
Yeah.
Paper filters filter out so many fines. And what those really fine particles do on your palate is really just produce a lot of bitterness. Like they kind of sit on your palate. They're bitter. Like you'll kind of get some of that when you have like a French press, especially when you're like near the bottom, like that siltiness. And you're going to get a lot of that in your pour overs if you're using like a metal filter or even like a cloth filter. Yeah. But paper filters do an excellent job of absorbing a lot of those fines and even some of the oils and that kind of stuff as well. Yeah. Just tastes a lot better.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah. That's what we'd recommend.
Yeah, definitely recommend paper filters. I mean, the fact that you can just, get a new one every time, they're uncompromised, and then toss them when you're done.
Yeah. Or you can like rinse them and recycle them probably.
Yeah. I mean, I presume a lot of them are compostable.
Yep.
So
sure. I think a lot of companies are.
mean, paper filter just.
Yeah. Something else on my list that is a must if you really want to have good coffee at home is a quality grinder. There is a lot to this. So for one, let's assume you're saying, okay, what if I just have it ground at the shop? They have a good grinder.
Yep,
they'll grind it.
It's an option.
It is an option. Here's why I don't recommend doing that if possible. Coffee, when it's roasted, produces a lot of CO2 and aromatic compounds. So these go into your nose, like your nose, and you perceive complex flavors through those aromatic compounds. As coffee ages, it loses those. When you grind coffee, it invites all of those out of your coffee. So it ages it really, really, really rapidly. So that's why it's best to grind your coffee right before you're going to make it, because those aromatic compounds are still in your coffee and they're going to end up in your cup and it's going to be more flavorful. And then as far as other grinders go, I'm going to say it again. There's a lot there's a lot of nuance to actually like what grinders do to coffee and the geometry of that. Yeah. But to put it very simply, the more consistent the grind size of your coffee is going to be, the more evenly extracted those coffee particles are going to be.
Yeah.
So if you have a really cheap grinder, especially like say a blade grinder, right? It's like a blender. It's just chopping them up. You're going to have massive, massive chunks of coffee that when the water touches them, they're hardly going to pull anything from it. So it's going to be very sour. And then you're going to have these really fine powdery pieces of coffee that when the water extracts from it, it's going to go right through it and it's going to pull so much out of it. You're going to get a lot of bitterness. So you're going to get a really unbalanced, bitter, sour, just unpleasant cup of coffee from that.
Yeah, definitely recommend staying away from a blade grinder if possible. I know a lot of grocery stores will sell them. A lot of people will have them already in your home. And it does sound harsh, but if you're not willing to get another grinder, I actually would recommend getting your coffee ground at the shop rather than using your blade grinder. It's probably going to be better, even though it's not going to be as fresh.
Yes, 100%.
Just that grind consistency is so important.
Yeah, it's crucial. As far as like different grinders go, if you're not really in coffee, it can be kind of intimidating to look at these grinders and know, what do I get?
Yeah.
There are basically two styles of grinders. One of those is conical burr and one is flat burr. The difference in those is going to be the shape of the burr. So conical burr is like two cones that kind of fit into each other. And the flat burrs are two blades that sit face to face. Flat burrs are a lot more expensive to manufacture, but they're also a lot more consistent. They're going to give you really, really consistent particles. I do not have a flat burr grinder for espresso at home, simply because to get flat burrs that are going to be very consistent at a very, very, very fine setting is pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Those grinders are typically very expensive. They're getting cheaper, but they're very expensive.
Yeah.
The grinder that I have at home for espresso is a conical burr. And the reason that it doesn't matter quite as much is the finer that you're grinding your coffee, the closer together those burrs are, actually the less room there is for there to be variation in the grind size, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with espresso, it actually matters a little bit less, like the kind of grinder you have. Even it does still matter, but it matters a little bit less. It's more forgiving because you're dealing with such a fine grind size.
It matters a little less, but also a little more at the same time. Just because when you're brewing espresso, all of the little changes you make, all the little grind size, even though the difference between the smallest of the fines and the largest of the courses is going to be exaggerated in espresso.
Yeah, because it's so concentrated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So most cafes will have flat burr espresso grinders, but that being said, most cafes, and those are cheapest one you can get, is probably at least a decent one that I've seen is around $1,000. And that's a lot of money for a grinder.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And there are companies that are making them cheaper.
Yes.
Which is super cool to see. But yes, what I have at home for espresso is the Baratza Encore ESP. I would recommend that for espresso, 100% for a home espresso grinder, and even for a filter grinder.
If you can use it for both.
You can use it for both.
Nice. And
it's a little over $100, which is really cheap.
Yeah.
It's kind of loud, but most home grinders are.
Yes.
It's an excellent grinder.
Yeah.
And from the espresso that I have at home, I've had many espressos that I've liked a lot more than a lot of espressos that I've had at a shop. So I haven't really found that the conical burrs have really impacted my enjoyment of the espresso that much.
Yeah.
As far as a filter grinder, we both actually have the same filter grinder at home.
Yep.
We have the fellow Ode.
Yeah. Great grinder.
It is a really excellent grinder. We both have the Ode Gen 1. They updated it, and I have the updated burrs. And I think that they're so good.
And that is a flat burr grinder.
Yes, that is a flat burr grinder.
Yeah.
So for build quality, coffee tastiness, and price, it's going to be hard to find anything that's like as comparable.
Exactly.
As the Ode. It's really excellent.
Well, what is it one for now? It's probably $350.
Yeah, it's around the $300 range.
A little more pricey, but
sounds like a lot.
It is worth it. It is worth it.
It really is. And I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, right, I'm paying $300 plus for a grinder that is only for filter coffee.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
Yeah. That's,
I get that. If you need one grinder that can do filter and espresso, absolutely get the Baratza.
yes.
Just know it won't do filter as good as the
Yeah.
Ode.
The Ode they claim that it does espresso, but
On the Ode, or are you talking about the Opus?
the Ode.
Really?
It does say you can grind it to espresso, but you get to the finest setting and it's really not espresso.
Yeah, it won't work for that. Not if you're really trying to make it good, but it really is an excellent, very good filter espresso or filter coffee grinder. It's very good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great option. Like you said, the Baratza ESP is what it's
Yes.
called.
Yeah.
That's an amazing option. I think that's probably the best starter option for most people.
100%.
Either that, or you can get roughly the same grind size consistency for a little bit cheaper if you're willing to get a hand grinder.
Yes.
Obviously, that does require a lot more manual labor, grinding your coffee with a hand grinder, but you're able to get a little cheaper that way. It's great for camping. I'm trying to think of
I think we both had hand grinders before we had any.
Definitely.
Because it's going to be, it might sound annoying, but it'll be so much better if you just use a hand grinder that has higher quality burrs than an electric grinder that has cheaper burrs.
And
It's
when you're
just
looking for a hand grinder, I recommend going for stainless steel burrs if you can.
Yes.
They make
ceramic.
but those tend to break and they
Wear out.
If you get too hard of a bean in there, it can actually miss a line, and then all your coffee grounds are all messed up. I did have that happen with one of my really old hand grinders before.
Yeah.
It was a bummer.
Yeah. So yeah, hand grinder is a great way to go if you really don't have that much money to spend on a grinder. I'd recommend that over getting just a bad electric grinder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you think of anything else that's like essential to making good coffee at home?
Oh, essential. I mean, simple thing. It's just essential, but a great glassware helps you like enjoy your coffee that much more. Like obviously, it's not going to change the taste of your coffee, but being able to have it in a glass that you really enjoy drinking out of really does improve your experience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put that in the essential category. That's one of the things that's nice to have.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to dilute what we're saying is essential, because those first things are really like, you will not have excellent coffee at home if you don't have those things.
Sure.
But yes, great glassware is really, it's a part of the experience. You have to enjoy your mug, have a mug you like. It just elevates it.
Yeah. Me personally, I love drinking out of mugs that are either white or clear, just so that I can see the coffee. In a darker mug, it's a little harder to see. I do really love that mug. But something about this, being able to see the color of your coffee, or a clear mug, be able to see it from the side is really nice.
Yeah, I agree with that. Something else that is nice to have, but not necessary, is, I would say, especially when it comes to espresso stuff, tons of like puck prep tools.
Yeah.
I will say this, because there are a lot of people that really like that stuff, and I do as well. It does add value to what you're doing. 100% adds value to what you're doing. It will improve what your espresso, but you do not need them. If you're enjoying the espresso you're getting right now, that's awesome.
That's great.
Don't buy anything else.
Yeah.
If you're not enjoying what you're having right now, it might be your fault. it might just be because you're not sure, you're missing something that could really improve what you're doing before you're buying another tool or gadget.
Yeah.
I have some things at home that I really enjoy using in espresso, and because I've got my base recipe locked in, right? Like I can get my espresso to taste really good without those things. All they do is bring it up marginally, but they bring it up.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's fun to have little tools and things you can experiment with.
Yeah.
To kind of mess around and kind of take you on, be a part of your journey of learning coffee and learning how different things affect the flavor.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's just important to know that buying another piece of gear isn't going to make your coffee better. Yeah. In that context.
Yeah. Well, we talked about filter coffee, the essentials of that. But what about the essentials of like espresso?
I feel like the only thing that I would say that's really different, because a scale, absolutely.
Definitely.
Good water, absolutely.
Yeah.
The main thing that's going to be different in the essentials is a good tamper. A lot of machines send you with a really crappy tamper. It's plastic. It doesn't work very well. Tamping is probably the number one mistake that I see people make with their espresso.
Yeah.
If people are like having a really hard time getting their espresso to taste good, they're usually not tamping very well.
Tamping and or distribution of the coffee grounds when you grind them into your portafilter.
Tamping, if the point of it is to compress that coffee bed as much as possible, so that there's resistance for the water to go through. I do not think that you can't over tamp coffee. You can't. If your coffee is tamped all the way, you can coarsen up your grind size. I don't know if you agree with that necessarily, but you can coarsen up your grind size. There are other things that you can do. I would recommend always just tamping as much as you can, because then it's not something you have to worry about. It's not a variable.
I mean, I don't think the average person could over tamp your coffee. Maybe if you're a bodybuilder, maybe.
I don't think a human can do it. If you had like a hydraulic press or something, I wouldn't recommend using a hydraulic press to tamp your coffee.
Definitely, that's the essential piece of gear you need.
Yes, that's something every home is missing, is a hydraulic press.
Mm-hmm.
A good tamper. I think that like a classic tamper is a great option.
Yep.
I think that a self-leveling tamper is really nice, so that the one kind of sits on the edge of your portafilter and will make sure that when you're pressing down, you don't have a puck bed that's like this or this. I don't love depth set tampers, simply because I want to be able to like tamp every coffee as much as possible rather than to the same level. But ironically, that's actually what I have at home.
Well, you could kind of adjust the depth where it's almost too much depth, right?
That's what I do.
Yeah.
I just have it maxed out.
Yeah.
So you can totally go that way as well. But I just recommend tamping all the way every time and having one that's nice, heavy, has some weight to it.
Yeah.
Fit your portafilter well. I think that's really key in getting good espresso.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously Espresso Machine is another thing. And there's a lot of machines out on the market.
Yeah.
I currently own a Breville. Oh shoot, what is it called? I think they made a new model now. I don't think they make the one I have anymore.
No, they stopped making
it.
You have
it's got the pre-infusion mode on it, but it doesn't have a grinder built in.
Is it the Breville Infuser?
I think so.
Is that the name of it?
Breville Infuser in black. I do really love it. Pulls great espresso, steams milk slowly, but that's what you're going to get with any home espresso machine.
Yes.
You just don't have the, boiler capacity that you would have in a commercial machine.
Yeah.
And then I got the model that didn't come with a grinder on the inside, only because I did hear some problems with the models that had a grinder built in. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they fixed that, but I've also heard things that if you have a machine, obviously it's very humid inside of an espresso machine. Yeah. You got hot water all the time, and you've got a grinder right next to it that the grinds need to be very dry when they're grinding. So basically, I was like, let me just get the grinder separately. And that's what I did. I have the Breville grinder that basically is the one that just comes in the machine, but just right on the side. It's great.
What in the world? I guess my Mac has a new wallpaper. I've never seen that before in my life. Did you? I was like, why did my screen just go green? Anyway, that's distracting.
Technical difficulties.
That's crazy. I've never seen that before. It scared me. I was like, oh gosh.
Getting hacked.
Yes. One, Breville did buy, they bought Baratza, which is the grinder I recommended earlier.
Really?
So they're actually
I did not know that.
Likely putting Baratza parts into their grinders, which would be very nice, because Barazzas are just, they're so good. They're simple.
Oh, yeah.
They're not that expensive, and they work really well, which is awesome.
I did say I have the Breville grinder, but I would recommend a Baratza grinder with your machine. I just got it just because it's like a package deal type of thing. Yeah. Same color, fits in the kitchen well.
Again, back on the Baratza, I punched the crap out of that thing.
This guy doesn't like grinder tension. I don't know.
No, I don't want the grinder to hold on to any of my coffee, and the Baratza isn't great about it. I do mist my beans with a little bit of water before I grind them, and it helps. But that's a
topic right there.
Yeah,
we could talk about that for a long time.
Another episode. Yeah, Jack doesn't do that, and his bar's a mess. But anyway, I punched the crap out of that grinder. I hit it, smack it on the counter, and it's so sturdy. It does a great job. So
Yeah.
Yes. What were you just talking about? Because I had something to say about that. Oh, the machine.
Yes, the machine.
Your machine doesn't have to be super expensive.
No.
It just doesn't.
I mean, they make, like, La Marzocco makes a home espresso machine, but it's like $5,000. So it's like, you know, you got to be a millionaire to have one of those, right?
Yeah. Yeah, probably a millionaire. Yeah,
exactly.
You have to have $1 million.
Or the one I've always wanted is the single group head machine from Slayer. It looks amazing, but it's like $9,000. So like, I'll probably never have it, but
yes,
it looks so good.
Things to think about when you're buying a machine, is you do not need like a double boiler machine. Those are expensive. First of all, what that's going to do, it's going to heat your espresso water temperature and your steam water temperature at the same time. It's just not that important. There's kind of two main systems. There's either a single boiler, which is what I have. So I have one boiler and it heats up to espresso temperature. And then when I want to steam, I turn on the steam switch and it takes a second to heat up to steam temperature. So going back and forth obviously takes a little bit more time.
Yep.
It's not that big of a deal.
I mean,
the at most maybe 2 minutes, if even.
Yeah.
That my shot would have to sit. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, we've had we got the single boiler machine here, and we've made drinks back to back, and really, it's really not a problem. Like, obviously, it takes more time than a commercial machine. It's not as snappy, but that's kind of what you expect.
Well, and I believe, I don't know if your machine specifically, but a lot of the Brevils have a thermojet is what they call it. It's a heat coil.
I don't think mine has that, but maybe it does.
It basically like heats your water actively. It's like it sends the water through it and heats it and sends it where it needs to go.
Yeah.
So that's a great system as well. So you're not heating up a large body of water, but it does take a second for your steam water to turn on because it's got to heat up a little bit of water.
Kind of heats on demand?
Yeah, heats on demand.
Yeah. But those ones, I believe those ones are a little more expensive, aren't they?
I don't know. I don't know how many Brevils have them. I think that's
maybe that's the standard now.
I think that's their main system.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're looking for like a budget espresso machine, the Breville Bambino is awesome.
Yeah.
I have some friends that have one that I've used, and it was a great experience.
Yeah. What's the price point on that one?
Maybe $300.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really cheap. It's small, doesn't take up a lot of counter space, and it works really well. You can get really tasty espresso off of it.
Something about an espresso machine on your kitchen counter just looks so nice.
Yeah. I have the Gaggia Classic Pro. I would not recommend it to people who don't know a lot about what they're doing, simply because it does take a little extra work. I really love it. If you really want to kind of get into espresso, if you want to like actually modify your machine a little bit, the Gaggia is super fun for that. But if you just
want
like
a project machine a little bit.
Yeah, I bought it, and every once in a while I'll like adjust something on it. I'll open it up and I'll add something new to it to kind of make it how I want it. But
yeah, the Breville is not like that.
Breville's not like that.
They do not want you taking it apart.
The Breville looks very nice, and it is very easy to use. So if you want something like that, I would definitely recommend a Breville. Yeah.
I mean, it works pretty much straight out the box, and it's great.
Yeah. As far as things to look out for, if you're trying to buy a machine and you see a really cheap one, I would stay away from a machine that has a pressurized portafilter. So like that's basically where the when you're making espresso, the bed of coffee itself provides the resistance for the water to go through. So there's nothing that's really stopping the water besides how tightly you tamp the coffee.
Yeah.
The pressurized portafilter, they make it to where the portafilter itself provides some resistance so that you can use like coarser coffee and that kind of stuff. It works. It's to make it a little bit more consumer friendly, but you're not going to be able to get great espresso from that. So I'd steer away from that. My Gaggia came with that as an option, but it doesn't have to use it. Some machines have to use those. So I would generally, like if you see that, I would maybe just try and find something else. But also, if that's what you want, that's fine. You'll probably get decent espresso.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Let me see. I wrote down some other things that nice to have. Yeah, as far as nice to have, there were some specific things that I didn't mention for espresso puck prep. One thing that I really like is paper filter. I think I mentioned that in the first episode. Those are really cheap. Honestly, like, they're nice to have, and they're super cheap. Just get it. It's so good. I really love putting paper filter below and above the espresso.
What does it do to the flavor, would you say?
Well, what that top one does is your water is hitting that paper filter, and it's distributing, it's spreading out instead of coming out of that like shower head that they have and kind of hitting at points on your puck.
Okay.
I'm really burpy today. It's a podcast. I don't know. Something about having a mic in front of me. It's ridiculous. What that paper filter does is just kind of helps that initial water spread out and pull right through evenly through your puck. What that bottom filter does, which I feel like is probably the most important one, is it actually filters out all of those really fine particles in the coffee and really cleans up your espresso. So there's really there's not that bitterness on the palate. Yeah. It really there's a lot of clarity. The first time I tried it, because I'd heard about it, I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I was like, whoa, this is really good. So whatever size your portafilter is, you can buy them online, find some, get it, try it. If you don't like it, you only spent $5, but I would seriously recommend that. But again, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Another thing that's not necessary for espresso prep is there are certain distribution tools that you don't necessarily need. They definitely improve how evenly your coffee is spread through your portafilter before you tamp. And that's really important because that water is pressurized and it's going to find the path of least resistance in your coffee. Yep. And so you want that to be as even as possible so that there is no path of least resistance and it'll evenly go through every inch of that.
Yeah. And one thing you can tell by if your espresso is somehow not tamped or distributed right is when you're looking at it coming out of your machine. This is a little easier to tell if you have a naked portafilter, but you can still tell on the split
naked meaning there's no spout on the bottom of it.
Yeah, typically portafilters will have a split at the end, so you can pull two different single shots. I prefer a naked portafilter only because I just like double shots. I also like to be able to watch what's going on straight out of there. As far as taste wise, there's not really a difference between them. But really, if your espresso is coming out very fast and it's almost coming out pale in color, spurting out a little bit, that can be that your coffee has not been distributed properly, so the water is finding a channel to get through and just coming right out.
Yes. And not all spraying means that. So sometimes a particle could get in one of the holes and just kind of make it shoot. But if it's really kind of all over the place, you can tell. Yeah. And it means you're unevenly.
Yeah. Well, that being said, that's not always the case. It could just be your grind size is too coarse.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah.
A naked portafilter is not necessary though as well.
No.
That's one of the first things that people want to get. You don't.
I don't even have one here.
Yeah, he doesn't have one at home. I have one at home because I wanted it, but it's not necessary. You can get good espresso out of the portafilter that comes with it.
Yeah, really, taste wise, it's almost identical.
It's just nice to visually be able to see what you're doing.
Yeah,
that's the only benefit to that.
Yep.
There, you may have seen on Instagram or whatever these wire distribution tools that people use. It's these prongs and they're whisking their coffee. It's called a WDT tool. Stands for Weiss Distribution Technique. This guy with the last name Weiss developed it.
Nice.
Those are going to help kind of distribute that coffee. There are other means to do that. It's not necessary, but that's super helpful. I had one and I actually switched to a different method, which is shaking. So I have a shaker that I grind into. I shake my coffee and then I bing, 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 and drop it into the portafilter. I use that to distribute instead of the WDT tool. Both of those things are nice. They're going to help improve your puck distribution, improve the quality of your shot. Not necessary.
Yeah. I mean, with espresso being ground so fine, they like to, because they have a static charge coming out of your grinder, they like to cling to each other. Yes. So something like that can help kind of de-statify it. I think I just made that word up.
Break up those electro clumps.
Fancy.
I think that's what James Hoffman called them, is the electro clumps.
I like it.
It's his term for it. Yes. So let me see here. There was something else that you. One last thing that I would say, and I think we kind of already touched on it. You don't need a bunch of equipment.
No.
You don't need a bunch of new equipment. As much as possible, just improve like your knowledge and your technique instead of trying to improve your gear.
Yeah.
Whenever possible, don't spend money. Like, honestly. Obviously, Jack and I both fall victim to nice new shiny things.
Oh, yeah.
We very much like our new shiny things with coffee.
Definitely. With anything.
Tech and any of that stuff.
Yep.
But you don't need to.
No.
So
don't be like us.
Yeah. Do your best to just try and figure out. It's like, okay, is this something where I'm using the wrong tool? Right? We said some of the essentials at the beginning, and if you're using the wrong tool, it's gonna really impact that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, a little bit of change of technique or a little bit more knowledge of how things are working will actually really help you to improve what you're doing.
Yeah.
Before you're buying another piece of gear, before you're getting another machine, another kettle, another brewer, work with what you have, because you can get good stuff from that.
And like we said, like, you know, we gave a lot of recommendations here at the beginning, but if you guys ever need it, like, want to know where to go or what next steps to take, feel free to reach out to us, leave a comment, message. We'd love to help in any way possible.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, if you guys have specific, like, even if they're like specific coffee questions, we'll take those. Like, if you're having a specific issue, whether it be dialing in your espresso or your pour over or any of that stuff, just like message us. We'd be happy to answer. We might be able to, I don't know, maybe we'll be able to throw together a video to show you guys how to do something or that kind of stuff. We definitely want to be able to do that stuff.
Definitely, absolutely. And like, I totally forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead. And
even with gear questions, if you have a specific gear question, like if you've got a machine that you're curious about, if you're like, I'm thinking about buying this, just
definitely
DM us or something. Like, say, what do you guys think of this?
Yeah.
And we'll give you our input. Not that it's like the absolute truth, but
yeah. And like, I feel like the world of coffee can be very daunting, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of nuance to it, a lot of stuff to learn. But like, when I started on my journey, that's what I love most about it, is that even now, after roasting coffee for almost 8 years now, there's always more things to learn. Like, I'm learning new things all the time, and that's what I enjoy about it the most, is just learning. So I really didn't know a lot of stuff when I first started out, and I still don't know a lot of stuff now, but that's the nice thing about it, is that like, there's always more stuff to learn, and we're all learning together in a way. Yeah,
really. Like, there's so much that we kind of like discover in coffee. Like, there are people that develop a new technique and they're like, oh, this is really good. And then we figure out, oh, there's actually a better way to do this, or all of that kind of stuff. So as a coffee community, we're all learning together just as people dive more into the science and stuff. But even as our smaller community, we want to like learn together and improve what we're doing and make good coffee at home simpler. Yeah. Amazing. Well, thanks so much for watching, guys. Yeah. We're really grateful for all of you for taking the time to listen and watch what we're doing. Yeah. And we're super excited about our next podcast, and we'll see you guys then. Absolutely. Bye. Cheers. Yeah.